Interest rates. Now remember, the market is focused on whether or not the central bank is likely to move interest rates and in which direction. Now, if together the economic data suggests growth, then it is more likely that the central bank will raise interest rates to control the inflation caused by the growth, as rising inflation will negatively affect growth. Now, economic growth can cause increased inflation, and this is simply because more production, more persons employed, more persons working will eventually lead to an increase in demand in the market, because more persons having money, more persons willing to spend. This increase in demand for goods and services may lead to increase in prices. Okay, if producers, manufacturers and producers cannot supply the goods and services to meet the demand, they will in turn increase the price of those goods and services. Okay, and this will cause inflation, which will negatively affect economic growth. Okay, rapid inflation will negatively affect economic growth. So the central bank tries to obtain gradual inflation, not rapid inflation, but gradual inflation, sustained gradual inflation at a certain pace. Rapid inflation will affect negatively economic growth, because if prices start to rise too rapidly, this may result in a decrease in purchasing power. Demand for goods and services will decrease because less persons will be willing to pay the higher price for the goods and services. Okay, and remember, if there is a decrease in demand, this will result in a decrease in production, which will eventually lead to producers cutting jobs. Okay, and less jobs will eventually lead to decreased spending, which will eventually lead to the central bank having to decrease interest rates to try to stimulate the economy to boost back spending. So rising growth can cause increase in inflation, which may negatively affect the economic growth. So the central bank has to pay keen attention to inflation. Now, remember, if the central bank decreases interest rates, this will make money cheaper to borrow. Okay, and if money is cheaper to borrow, more persons will be willing to borrow money, and hence more investing in the economy, more persons borrowing money because money is cheaper. More investing in the economy results in more spending. More spending means greater money supply in the economy. Now, if the central bank increases interest rates, this means money is more expensive, less persons are likely to borrow money from the banks, hence less investments in the economy, and less spending because the money supply has now decreased because less persons are willing to borrow money from the bank. Hence, this will cause a decrease in the money supply in the economy, which should prevent prices from rising too rapidly. Okay, if the money supply decreases, less persons have money, which means less demand for goods and services, which should slow down or prevent prices from rising further. So the central bank has to increase interest rate to prevent rapid rise in inflation, and the central bank has to decrease interest rate to try to stimulate demand in the economy. Okay, to try to stimulate inflation in the economy, the central bank has to decrease interest rate. And there are many other ways that the central bank may try to stimulate demand in the economy or try to stimulate inflation. The central bank may use quantitative easing and other means to try to stimulate demand in the economy and try to stimulate inflation. Okay, now section recap. Focus on how likely the news release will be in affecting the current sentiment towards interest rates. Okay, remember the focus is always on interest rates. Now remember, the higher the interest rate, the more attractive it is to investors who are looking to gain interest on their capital. As a result, whenever a country raises interest rates, we tend to see an increase in demand for that country's currency. Okay, so remember, whenever a country starts to increase interest rates, investors will look to invest in that country in order to gain from the increase in interest rate. Okay, so that is it for interest rates and this section.